This is 2.5 Gamers podcast, and this time we are bringing a new segment which is called An Honest Interviews. We are asking tough questions, but also having fun and dropping some knowledge with the industry. Cool people. They happen to be also a really big expert in the field. And today, it's a pleasure to welcome Joakim Achren. Welcome, Joakim.
Thanks, Matej. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, this is amazing. This is a new start of our segment. So let's see what happens. Definitely want to have a lot of fun, and I have some really like burning questions that always come into my mind when everybody is talking about investments. But before we jump into everything, even though you are very well known in the industry, could you just give us a little bit of a brief intro about yourself, so we can start with that?
Yeah. So my background is that I started in gaming as a programmer, probably like over 20 years ago. Nice. In the late 90s, and then gradually went that path of, becoming a bit better at programming and getting better jobs. But then eventually I wanted to do my own game studio. I wanted to, because I think I had this kind of entrepreneur bug from early on as a kid, doing a lot of projects where I was creating software on my own. Nice. And then that happened in 2005 when I started my first game studio called Iron Star Helsinki, which did like a mobile virtual world for like Symbian Java phones, very early days. Tried that for several years and it didn't work. And then we pivoted to Facebook games, and that worked quite well for a while until Facebook started asking everybody to buy ads, and we didn't know how to do that profitably. Then ended up closing the studio, and I went to Supercell, was there for the time when they went from Facebook to mobile to launch Clash of Clans heyday, left again to start a new studio called Next Games this was early 2013. Nice. And we raised a lot of money, did an IPO 2017. I left 2019. I wanted to get out of this crazy ride. It was very, I had a burnout experience from that. It was very intense. I just needed to do something else. And I started elitegamedevelopers.com, which is a website targeting people who are trying to start a game studio. Yeah. Like every sorts of material that I could find, I've been trying to put there. Also a newsletter. You wrote a book as well, right? Yes, a book which came out 2 years ago called Long Term Game, How to Build a Video Games Company. And then I have a podcast as well, 138 episodes so far, with entrepreneurs and investors as guests. And also, I've been doing a lot of angel investing, part of Play Ventures, the VC fund, as a venture partner. So there's a lot there. Yeah, I just love spending time with games companies and the founders and all the problems that they might have.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so I wanted to ask, why did you start the Elite Game Developers and not a new gaming studio? But I guess you already answered that. So it was a really intense experience after just leaving the Next Games and wanted to do something else, but still remain in the industry.
Yeah, it felt like for me podcasts were something that felt really amazing as a way to create content. So I was a long-time consumer of podcasts. Started listening to them probably 2009, 2010. Nice. And
back then it wasn't a thing, right?
No, it wasn't. But there was a lot of entrepreneur podcasts already, and they always felt like, hey, this is so interesting. People are sharing what they're learning, what they've learned, advice, everything. but then I had to do next games, and it took a while to get back into thinking about, hey, maybe I should do a podcast as well. I love the format, but I also love just create content. What I like, things that I've experienced. That's why I just wrote the book like in 2 months, and then I had a person who helped me proofread it and edit it and then put it out. And yeah, I'm actually spent last weekend just working on the second book.
Can you share a little bit more? Or is it a surprise?
It's about team work.
Oh, nice.
Is
okay.
the thematic, but like I'm still figuring out like the scope of how I want to approach this.
Okay, nice. Well, I definitely share the love for creating content, and if it's a blog or a podcast or whatever, just sharing the experiences and the knowledge to other people from the industry. That's super powerful. And I mean, you have that really powerful thing going on in Finland. It's not that common like anywhere in the world, honestly, that people openly share everything. Here in Slovakia, even though it's like 5 game developers here, they definitely don't share as much as they should. And that's what I've been seeing around. As soon as I started like bringing the numbers to the actual presentations, everybody's like, oh wow, we've never seen this before. It's like,
yeah,
how is that even possible? Come on, we are here to share. So yeah,
in a way, the Finnish mentality is kind of like, if you think about the spectrum of naivety, like we are super naive. We just share. We don't really understand if we should be or not sharing. We're just naive, and it's fun.
But that's the thing. Like even if you share some data or anything that you experience, and you can learn from it, but you will, even though you do exactly the same thing, you will have very different, process, experience, everything. It just won't work exactly the same for you as it did for me. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's the background. Everything relates to everything.
Yeah. You mentioned also you are a part of the Play Ventures company, and I know you just. Well, not just, but you became a partner. Like it's a recent thing. So how can you just become a partner at the VC company?
I was actually talking with them when I was leaving Next Games that this is something I would really want to do, like getting into the investing. It felt like a great way for me to be involved with gaming startups. I think like the whole process went that way, that I started doing angel investing. I started writing about like what I'm thinking about startups, how to help startups, what kind of help do they actually need, where do they need structure, things like that. So just putting out a lot of things that I'm thinking about. And I actually got like contacted by several funds. This was 2020. Like late 2020 to join as a venture partner, which is kind of like a part-time role where you're not full-time, but you're kind of one leg in the VC world already. And that felt like the right choice for me as I'm still figuring things out. So the options led me to pick Play Ventures because it was kind of the best fit. Regarding like how they think about gaming, how they think about startups. And also I knew the guys from way back in the Finnish industry. So it was a privilege to get to work with them.
Nice. Are there any like, skills or requirements that someone need to have in order to be a good venture partner, or like you said, one leg part-time VC partner? Because it's definitely not an easy job. That's something I can tell, even though I've never done it before.
Yeah, I think being an entrepreneur is one way to approach becoming a VC. It's just going through that path and seeing what happens there and experience. Because like applying the money to startups that VCs do is like just 1% of what you can add to a company. The 99% is navigating all sorts of troubles with the founders that come up, the problems, everything that's internal, external, everything. And if you have been seeing things like that happening in your previous career, if you can help and apply that knowledge, I think that's one way to get into VCs. Just be that kind of person.
Nice.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. All right. Well, it's an interesting, definitely interesting, let's say, job position. Maybe I can put it into my bucket list for later stages in my life.
Yeah, maybe there's many other ways you can approach becoming a VC, like other ways to just, be fanatical about like where the market is going and being this kind of like seer of how markets are changing, and then, coming in to actually give that advice to the VC portfolio companies. But I think it is always like, hey, what can you actually bring to the table after the cash has been put into the startup? So, yeah.
Yeah, and what exactly can you bring into the table? I mean, like you are just becoming a best friend with the CEOs, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's there's different kind of roles. Like you can be a board member where there's like official board meetings where you're meeting once a month, twice every second month, having that kind of role, or you can have a lesser role where it is weekly, bi-weekly catch-up calls, like just getting to help the founders in what their problems are.
Okay, so I guess so that's how your LinkedIn is able to be full of being an investor and then board member in multiple companies, right? So
yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, it's kind of, you don't necessarily spend time with the companies doing the actual work, but you take up sessions where they need help and where you can help out.
And then do you actively approach the companies, or they do it? So for example, CEO just, see some kind of problem within the team, and then they just approach you, or you are trying to be, proactive and try to see the problem before it actually happens?
It's both, actually.
Okay.
I would say that there's some proactivity that I've applied when I'm helping founders, but then there's a lot of these situations that aren't really evident until the founder brings them up.
Okay. Yeah.
So it really depends. I think one of those areas which are interesting is like when you need to raise another round. That's like the earlier the better, usually is the way to approach that. And it's not evident to founders who often, more than not, are sensitive about diluting their ownership. Because when you raise more money, you need to give out more equity to investors. But the investors know that the cash that you're getting into the company is always also putting the company to the next level. So the quicker you can go to the next level, the better with these venture-backed companies, because then it means that there's maybe even an exit coming in the future, and the companies as well doing much better versus like they're using their 12 to 18 months runway, and then like if that happens only in 18 months, it's going to be very problematic, and it's going to be less easy to get the right terms and everything. So it's tricky.
Okay. And just maybe a quick question about could you explain what the pre-seed, seed, and Series A and Series B, C, whatever actually means? How do you define those stages?
Yeah, the pre-seed is the first money usually in from VC or angel investors, where the amount would be like few $100,000 to $1 million, in that range. or even 2 million is nowadays still said it's pre-seed. So it's the area where you don't yet have anything happening in the business that would say that, hey, this is gonna be big.
Okay, yeah.
Or there's no evidence of that besides the team and the idea, and maybe some prototypes or something. But then, like, you go from there to the next stage where you're graduating, is that you have, if you're talking about the game studio that is raising funding, it is that you're going from that idea stage to actually having executed some part of the project to a place where you can show that things are working, that we've progressed, and maybe there's KPIs already, some early indicators, and then you're raising that seed round, which is the next stage of, like, depending where you are at, but like a few million, to actually go through to the stage where you show that, okay, this is going to work, and this is going to be a big business when this game goes into global. So even with the seed funding, you are not going to be scaling the business, meaning that you're not going to be hiring a lot of people, but you're not also going to be spending a lot into user acquisition or into other marketing activities. So then that stage, this is just, of course, like an optimal way of approaching things. Yeah. It's never usually this way, like strictly. And then you get to that A, B, C, D, whatever. That means that you're growing something that works. You've kind of, with the Series A, you're already shown that it works and this business is going to work.
Okay.
30% likely that it will work. There's still 2/3 that it won't. But yeah, it kind of works that way. And each stage becomes more likely that the company will become huge and successful. And that's why the valuation also goes up, because it's more valuable to come into the company later.
Okay. So what you're saying is that in the pre-seed stage, you're basically looking at the team mainly as a KPI, and in the seed more about like MVP of the game, right? And like the first playable, and then if that works, then you are looking at the long-term plan of how to scale or grow the company and the game.
Yes.
Okay. So we talked about the different KPIs in the different stages, and the question is then, like, how do you actually decide to invest in companies? Like, what is your due diligence process? Because obviously it's not that easy to just deploy some money into the gaming company, and if it's a like unknown company, or like there is a couple of just dudes starting their own small studio, like how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's constantly evolving. I think I'm mostly spending time trying to figure out what the founders want to actually do nowadays. Like what do they want to actually do with the company? Like, why do they believe that their product is a good idea? How do they believe that they can execute and build something amazing? And also talk about how much they know about capital allocation. Kind of, if you raise now like 1 million, like, do you know already what you need to do in the next 12 months if all goes well? What do you need to do after that in the next 12 months and after that? So I'm just trying to figure out how knowledgeable they already are about what they need to do if they're doing a game studio. And it's fine if they don't know all the questions.
That was my next question, because
I think it's great if they say that they don't understand. Like if they admit versus they they come up with something.
And they pretend, okay, so we definitely know what we are going to do, but they don't know a shit about
it. But then there's some good things there as well. So it really depends on so many context related things. So it's kind of hard to say like what I'm looking at. But maybe one thing that I am looking at is red flags.
Yeah, okay.
Because like I ask 100 questions and I want to discover the red flags that come up organically. Sometimes they just come out when I'm asking something. They say something that really like points out that, oh, this that sounds like problem later on. Like it's quite like you're interviewing somebody for a job, because you want them to be kind of good for the thing that they're signing up for, which is to run a venture-backed company, and that's the job. So then the job has a lot of nuances. Like what I really like about founders, if they're very not ego-driven, so that they're kind of, they want to build this company because it feels like it needs to exist, and not that, hey, I need to be a founder because I always wanted to be a founder. So that's not a good motivation to actually do a company.
Do you have like any red flags that you could point out that, okay, so if you see this, I don't know, whatever. Okay, so we have 1 million. We are going to buy Lambos for it, but making this up, obviously. But.
Something like that, where the founder has a side business that they will continue.
But you know,
cannot.
You also said, I think in interviews that or even in the newsletter, that like all the founders need to have like something on the side. I know you mentioned like blogging and writing and doing the podcast, but what's the difference between the side business and like doing this for basically free? That's also something to keep your mind pretty much busy.
I have this article which talks about the side project. I think to a limit it makes sense. Like writing as a founder is very important because it brings you get to process your thoughts into writing. So releasing a blog, for instance, is excellent for any founder who should think about that. Because that's communication also towards your team and your organization, your investors, everything, future investors. It's also like, it's about communication, but it's also kind of marketing as well.
About the style of communication as well, like how you write, and if it's also something that everybody can understand quite quickly and not too complicated. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I think podcast isn't a good thing for a founder, to be honest, because it's then you're the journalist and not the creator in a sense.
Probably like too exposed to a lot of people, and not everybody is obviously a fan of podcast. And then sometimes you say something stupid, and you never know who is going to process that and how. That's true.
It comes from a different reasoning. It's already like a business of its own versus what the writing can be.
Okay. But why is that the business problem and the writing as a non-profit activity not a problem?
There's a certain amount of time that you can allocate to work in a day, which is like healthy, and like I would want you to work 5 hours and nothing else. That would be healthy. And if you can spend that 5 hours on the startup, that's great. And the rest of time with your family, loved ones, friends, everything that helps you recover for the next 5 hours the following day. So include that writing into like a way of processing your work. That's great. But if you start doing like a podcast, whatever kind of media business next to your startup, then like that's dangerous.
Okay. Yeah, it can be a little bit overwhelming if you do a lot of stuff. it was a time when I was having definitely more projects than I would need, let's say that way, because I was like, okay, so let's try to get as many things done as possible. And then I found out like, okay, so this is probably like too much. It's like, yeah, let's not do that anymore. And in that case, I always, try to have like 2 or 3 projects buffer and don't work on the full capacity like anymore and ever will be, because I want to spend the time with my family, and I just want to work, as you said, like a couple of hours a day, like 6, maximum 8 hours a day, and then everything else is just going to family and focusing on the relationship I can have with my daughter and my wife and the rest of the family as well.
Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And so there is, you mentioned, I think, on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well, like now is the best time to start a gaming company. Like why? Why now is never been a better time to start a gaming company?
Well, there's few reasons. I think there's never been this much capital from outside investors available. Like if you just look at the recent fund, VC fund announcements, the Griffin Gaming Partners, Makers Fund, A16Z, and there's more for sure coming. Think 3 years ago, there was so less amount of VC funds doing gaming. Like 5 years ago, even less. So this all happened so quickly. So in the grand scheme of like 40 years of games industry, now the last few years has been super great. Of course, it might get better and better, but it's never been as good as now. Yeah. And also we're getting so much more sophisticated as an industry, where there's more companies that have gone public in the gaming sector, like from different geographical locations as well. So there's more knowledge about like how do we grow companies like big game studios. Then like also the exit possibilities are more numerous than before, like consolidation bodies like Embracers, whatnot, who are buying studios. So it's like that path from thinking about starting a studio, if you're capable in making games, it's kind of a no-brainer to not try it, because it's such an interesting time to do, spend time in your life just thinking about how do I do a business. Okay, so hypothetical question. So I want to start a gaming studio, and you said there's no better time than now. But I still have like some money and some cash left from my previous companies and jobs. Let's say $500,000. So what should I do? Should I use this money and bootstrap the company, or should I get an investor? Just in case I would need more money. Like I know there's probably no like one answer to this, but I would definitely want to hear more thoughts. Yeah, there's probably a very contrarian advice for this, which would be that look for people who want to be founders and give them equity instead of salary. Find people who want to do that kind of project. At least start off with that for, let's say, 6 months, where most of the work doesn't go into, hey, let's code this prototype, let's try out quickly some game concepts, but rather sit down and talk about what kind of company you want to build, and read these books that give you insight into company building. Because most of the time, the companies that I'm looking at don't have people who've done games companies before. I would say 85% of the companies that I'm working with are first-time founders, which means that they don't have the experience of doing a company before. But if you read books like Good to Great from Jim Collins, and there's a bunch of there's a bunch of other similar great books. Now I'm reading this Why Startups Fail which is by a professor from Harvard Business School. It's a really new book that came out, I think, last year.
Nice.
Like those kind of books really give you that insight of, okay, this is what I'm going to be expecting from this job of being an entrepreneur. And that helps you already like get past one point where you're going to be surprised about issues, because there's going to be so many problems coming up that will surprise you, and also in a negative way surprise you, like let you down in a way. So getting used to what are the common problems helps a lot for somebody. Even though you would have the cash, you would have the money to start prototyping, testing, doing stuff. I think having that discussion is great, because then you build a foundation that you can build a company on. And then you can think about, like, do we start spending the money that we have? Do we raise money? What we do?
Yeah, I definitely believe like people are the cornerstone of all the companies, and if you have the right people in the right seats, then everything is possible. Basically, it just takes time and dedication, I would say, and then
there's it feels often with these game studios is that they're so anxious to do the company that spending 6 months trying to find even better co-founders is something that they're not willing to do, because they're so anxious to do the studio.
Let's do it as soon as possible.
Yes, I think that would already, like, if you're thinking about first-time founders raising from venture capital, if I would see a company where the team has spent 2 years or a year planning, putting together the team, and now they have a few ideas that they're going to be approaching, that would already be very different from what I get pitched usually. And that would really like open my eyes. Okay, like these people are really thinking about how to approach this company thing. Yeah.
And you know, going to a slightly different topic, nowadays all the hype around the crypto and the Web3. Like, why do you think a lot of gaming companies with some like decent results or mediocre results trying to pivot quickly to the Web3? Is it like because of the technology or free money from investors, or the train is already gone?
Yeah. Web3 craziness is ongoing for sure. There's so much interest there. Like now we saw this Bored Ape Yacht Club raising this 450 million. Yes.
Oh my God.
And they're going to build a metaverse with that IP, everything. Yeah. And all the, buzzwords like land and everything is there. And like, if you look at their numbers, like they made 130 million in revenue last year, and the profit was 120. So it's pretty amazing how good the margins can be in this Web3, which definitely is interesting. I think the problems here are quite similar to what were in the late 90s internet bubble, where there's everybody who can code something in crypto can get funding. Like, you could code a website, you could get funding. There's some of that happening. You have an NFT project and everybody throws money into NFTs. Yeah. I don't know how sustainable that is, to be honest. Like, it's like there's when we're coming from gaming, I think virtual goods is something that we're so used to seeing, having utility, having long-term value. But like most of this industry that is coming to NFTs is not coming from that kind of background where they've seen value in virtual assets. They've suddenly seen that the profile picture can be worth 2 million. And that's, it's kind of the analogous to virtual goods in gaming. There's more in gaming than what these profile pictures currently can offer. And that's why they are all expanding into these land projects, into these metaverse projects, whatever, UGC, because there is definitely like what is next.
Yeah.
Like how many pictures of monkeys can you really sell until it becomes too old? So like that, I think with gaming, like if you know and if you study and if you really pay attention to what crypto is providing, and also spend some time in the decentralized finance, do some yield farming, whatnot, kind of participate in those activities, it will tell you a lot more what it is all about. Because I think the whole Web3 is so much about just belief that there is wealth, there's value in these virtual assets because they are on the blockchain. And because enough people, like millions, hundreds of millions of people, believe in that value, it's kind of hard to let go. It's kind of like there's the dollar, US dollar. There's billions of people who believe that there's value in that as well. So it's not too different from that. And if you have a game that has virtual goods, people already believe in their value. Yeah. Like you have a roster in an RPG game of great characters and gear. And if those would be on the blockchain and you had something that is very scarce in the game, it would have value. It would have meaning. So, yeah.
Okay.
Smart teams will win in
okay,
Web3.
So smart teams. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a huge opportunity, of course, to jump on board and try to create something quickly. And obviously, last year was all about raising the money. And like you said, there were just some of the buzzwords like Web3, Metaverse. What else? UGC, NFTs. And if you had all of these in the pitch deck, then everybody was throwing money at you. But now, sorry, buddy, that's already gone. Now everybody's looking at how you can actually build games with a proper economy that can have a crypto or Web3, crypto layer on top of it, and not starting with crypto and then try to duct tape the game around that.
Yeah.
Because that's what the Ape Board Ape Yacht Club did. It's like they released the Ape versus Mutants game, which is an Archer clone. There is no monetization, nothing, and they just they released it and said, "Oh, this is the game where you can just have your ape as an NFT and then play with it, nothing else." So how is why? There is no value added in this game, really.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I think the existing things, the cool thing about gaming is always when these new platforms emerges, you can transfer a lot of the knowledge from the previous platforms to the next. So it's the strength for the games industry, which kind of you pull in people and the people stick there because the knowledge is always valuable. And it's cool that new technologies, when they emerge, gaming is sort of the first thing that gets adapted with these new technologies. So, that's why I think the industry will continue growing. And Web3 feels like it's just one of the new platforms getting really good adoption. Also, I would say the money is there, with the margins that we can see. So, investors need to be getting burnt a bit with the projects that don't work. So
because how do you do the due diligence for these type of companies and games? I mean, there is no data yet. So is it driven more by the team again, or feeling, or so this is a huge opportunity, but I still know a lot of games will die eventually. But what if there is this 1% of games that I invest in that will become a huge hits?
Yeah, I look at the LinkedIn of the founders often, of these projects. The problem is that these projects usually don't have like they have a team slide that doesn't have real names of people. So it's very hard to do
It's very hard,
due diligence on the founders, like who are they actually.
That's a huge thing in blockchains. I work with one guy and one company, and they're like, so why do you use like a very different name? Like, oh well, that's the thing in the crypto. You will you will understand afterwards. Like, aha, okay, well, all right then.
Yes.
What do I know?
yeah.
In these like all like is important like the token allocation like pre-drop, or like how does that work?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot as well, and I think it doesn't really like, is it an NFT drop, token sale, whatnot?
Yeah.
Like you're putting out some sorts of crypto assets that are on the blockchain that have perceived value in future earnings, which could be airdrops that come in where you get more NFTs because you are an owner, and they have a tradable value as the project starts scaling, and you can sell them for stable coins and then cash out if you want into the real money. So yeah, I think all the projects are doing what they should be doing, because the model works really well where you have this kind of public market that is willing to trade assets quite quickly for these projects. And I don't think that's necessarily going to go away, because it feels more like pre-seed investing or angel investing in a way.
It's still like with the tokens and coins, it's a bit tricky, I would say. For the regular stock, it can take like 10 years to get some money. But in terms of the tokens or coins, as soon as the drop takes place, like you can just pump and dump everything and then adios.
Yeah. Yes.
Which happened with the ape coin basically. So they started on like $30 or $40, and everybody who just received an airdrop of these coins like started selling immediately, because why not? And then the price dropped to like $4 or something. So this is kind of dangerous, right?
Yeah. I think there's mechanics there that we could think about, like vesting, for instance, that you cannot like release everything immediately. The dynamics are quite similar, I would say, from public market when you think about it. And a stock is appreciated or overvalued, and suddenly the market realizes that is true, and it was uncertain, but then it's like 100% true, and you start selling it. Like airdrops are interesting because they're kind of like bonus rewards that come. So like better airdrops, something that people don't want to sell because the current utility isn't yet utilized, and it will be at a later stage in future. There's a lot of interesting stuff.
Artifact company, they were acquired by Nike, I think. Nike, and they did a really interesting airdrop, basically dropping a monolith, and that monolith started to be what I think selling around like 30K or something. But they said, so if you actually hold it for a long period of time, it's gonna get unlocked, and you can get a rare item which can have even higher price or value, and everyone who actually holds the monolith, it can get a little like more extra bonuses in the future, which prevented obviously like from selling a lot of these monoliths. So that can be one mechanic how to prevent these pump and dumps.
And of course, like also like setting expectations that like hey, we're going to release this at $40, but we know that it's going to go to like 100% less of that, that it's just an expectation that this will happen, that it's not a surprise to anybody. Like when, you're giving your team as well these coins as a bonus and things like that, the team gets pretty demoralized if their bonus of 10,000 ape coins went to 100 ape coins.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, if you just know that will happen, if you level that with your team, that this is definitely what will happen, that's much better. If you can model out like what you believe will happen in the market when you do these airdrops, when you put out these assets that can be traded. So I think that's also like part of the reason why, like, if you think about the gaming industry stock that went up when the pandemic hit, like all the publicly traded games companies started going up, and then there's a correction last fall, 2021, when everything started gradually going down, and it still continues. If the companies would have internally discussed with their teams that, hey, this is most likely going to happen during the pandemic, that there will be a correction and we go back to pre-pandemic, I think that sets kind of expectations of also like what is going on, that we're overvalued or the dynamics of the market don't yet support like high enough multiples for game studios or companies. So yeah, I think there's so much there about just setting the right expectations.
Yeah, that's really important. And I know you mentioned it at the beginning, and then obviously I'm a part of the syndicate as well. But can you tell me a little bit more about like why you started the syndicate, and then there's the connected question, because I know I read somewhere you mentioned that having only one line on the cap table is way better than like having like 20 names in there. Like why is that?
Yeah. So the Angel Syndicate that I have, it's a group of close to 170 people now on a Slack workspace where I started with this was that I wanted to get into like allocating other people's money into the deals that I was seeing, because there was so many cool startups coming up constantly, and I didn't want to raise a fund, and also I didn't want to go full-time VC. So what was the model? The model was Angel Syndicate. So I was reading this book from Jason Calacanis, he has this podcast which is huge now called All In Podcast. He wrote a book 4 years ago called Angel, because he started doing angel investing like late 2000, like 2008, 2009. He was in Uber, and he made like 120 million with his Uber angel investment. And the book kind of like goes into like what he's learned in the 10 years of doing angel investing. And one of the things was the syndicate that he runs called Jason's Syndicate. It's an ongoing thing, and you can join that as well nowadays. So I thought about that model. How could I do that? And I started like asking people. There's a Finnish business angel network, and I asked like tips for how to set up a syndicate, and the legal structure. Like tips that I got were for setting up a holding company structure in Finland. Did that for a while with the group. And it was very, very cumbersome. Like there's so much legality in Finland regarding all sorts of reporting and everything. So now I've been recently doing a lot of this stuff in the UK with the like these special purpose vehicle providers there. It's much more effective where they take a lot of the work and reporting as well. But the motivation was to actually start trying to allocate other people's money and learn from that, to be a manager of money.
Okay.
But yeah, your question about the 40 people on the cap table.
And then there's the other part of the question, like why is that the difference?
From the one like a beast.
Yeah. Well, like you have one syndicate instead of like 20 people on the cap table as an angels.
Yeah, there's definitely the benefit of any future investor looking at the cap table and seeing like who are the owners in the company. When you have a syndicate group, it sort of means that there's some structure behind this group where the decision making is more centralized versus 40 people where the decision making isn't at all centralized. It's decentralized, which in a bad way, often for making shareholder decisions. That's one. Then the other thing is like if you're raising another funding round, you can just ask the syndicate lead for like, hey, are you going to participate in this round with your syndicate versus going to 40 people and ask, are you all going to, participate in the new round? And then you need to start organizing that. So there's tricky things. Okay. There.
How do you find companies for the syndicate? Is it just opening up LinkedIn and your messages that I guess you are getting millions of them, or is it just like inner circle somewhere in between the VC companies?
Yeah, probably half of them come through friends who introduce me to them, and the other half is quite organic, that people reach out. I think it's even higher, like how much of the deals that happen come through friends. So probably 2/3 come from mutual contacts, and then the last third comes from just organically looking at LinkedIn and seeing somebody saying, hey, I'm going on this startup venture, or I'm going to do something else next, but I won't tell you what. And then I just ping them and ask. This is how things happened actually with one of the companies that I invested in, which was really interesting because the founder CEO just messaged on or sent a LinkedIn post that he's leaving King and he's doing stuff, and then it escalated to an investment because I just asked him if he's doing a startup.
Nice.
And that's happened several times in the other context as well.
Yeah, I know Eric Suford also mentioned this. He's just, looking at the LinkedIn and trying to see who is leaving, what company, and then offering like a startup money. Because that's okay, but that's an interesting strategy.
Yeah. Nice. It feels like it works.
So. Yeah, definitely. So I have a couple more questions, and this one is really about like the UA, because I know, and I've been hearing this for some time. Like every time there is an investment going on, like investors are really keen for the companies to have like internal UA people. So like why is that? Like is it because why is that?
Yeah, I think there's an aspect of like if the company is already at the seed stage where the next stage is then to start scaling. I think the money that you're raising at the seed stage there should be an allocation for thinking about building a team that will take care of user acquisition, and this is for free to play studios.
Yeah.
So there's going to be optimization, there's going to be A/B testing, there's going to be creatives that will be tested, like making those creatives, changing those creatives, like trying different, cuts out of those creatives. So it's like somebody on top of that stuff. I think you want to have that in-house. at least in the seed stage. Afterwards, like the seed happens. So yeah, I think it's like the earlier you go to pre-seed, it doesn't matter really, because you then you can do a lot of external stuff. But like after seed, yes,
everything should be internal. Okay. And I guess it definitely adds value to the company a little bit when you have a senior UA person in-house. But also, even if you have an internal team, everything can change, and that can leave. So it's also a bit tricky. These days, when the remote work is pretty much common thing, you can work with a lot of companies from different parts of the world, and it's tricky. But I totally understand. And there is like one tricky question. So if you can discuss anything, like an anti-portfolio, like if you have like a biggest regret that you've done in the past, or like any failure that happened that you can share. Obviously, if you can, then it's okay.
Yeah, because I haven't been investing for more than 3 years, and the only company that I could have possibly invested in is Reworks, if I would have been looking at companies immediately when I started. But I wasn't really like actively doing that process. And I don't know if I would have gotten the chance to invest, to be honest. I don't know the founders that well. So I would say like I'm probably going to be more educated on this area in 2 years or a year, when I look at all the rejections that I've sent out to founders, and just look at the CEO's name and then look up the email. So Well, Reworks, that can be painful a little bit. But it was like I didn't have any chance to invest. So if I would have started a bit earlier, then possibly. So I don't have those kind of nightmares yet.
Okay. They will come. Don't worry.
I know. I know so many people who have these stories. So
very good. Definitely want to hear them out. But there are two last questions basically. The first is what is your favorite book and why? And this is from our mutual interview we did in the past, which I really enjoyed, and I really liked this question. So what's your favorite book and why is that?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this once in a while as well. I think it's getting to a point where I'm more keen on reflecting on the books that talk about like how you can live a better life. So Ryan Holiday's Stillness is the Key has, I think, the best stuff for me personally, where I am in life, where it's so much about, hey, you've done so much stuff in your career, a lot of interesting stuff. Then what? And his book is really good at like bringing like balance into life. So Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday.
Okay. Nice. Well, and in that case, we have our bonus segment, which I came up with, which is a set of multiple questions, and you need to answer in like 1 or 2 seconds. So I didn't share this beforehand, so you don't know what I'm going to ask. But it's very simple. So if I ask like, okay, so what's your favorite color, blue or yellow? And you say blue. Okay. So let's do that. So where do you play games? It's mobile or console?
Mobile.
Do you prefer books or movies?
Books.
What's more important for the founders, writing or podcasting?
Writing.
Okay, and 2 last questions. Next game or Supercell? What would you choose? Next game or Supercell?
Choose for what?
Just whatever. If you hear these two companies, and what would you prefer? I mean, for example, joining. Let's say joining. I mean, you found it's Next Game, so it doesn't.
Next Games.
Yeah. Okay, and the last one. That's a tricky one. So what's more important? Elite game developers or the Syndicate?
Elite game developers.
Nice. Okay, perfect. That's it.
Man, you put me on the spot there. But
yeah.
It's good.
It's we need to have a little bit of fun. And obviously, we will have fun next week when we are in Istanbul. I'm looking forward to meet you in person. Until that happens, thank you very much for coming and then sharing all the knowledge with me and with the rest of the listeners. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Matej. This was fun.
Nice.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.